Good afternoon again. My name is Niccolò Figattalamanca. I'm the Secretary General of No Peace Without Justice. I'm very pleased to give the floor directly to Ambassador Isma Bjulik, if he will correct me in the pronunciation, who was just recently appointed ambassador and permanent representative of Ukraine to the United Nations and international organizations in Geneva. It's not his first stint at the UN. He has already served in all other UN headquarters, Vienna, Nairobi, New York, and now Geneva. We're very pleased that he has kindly agreed to open this session. The only variation on the program is that the Deputy Prosecutor General of Ukraine is joining us by WebEx. She was already on the way here, and her colleague who was accompanying her actually made it all the way, but she had to go back to Kiev as a new Prosecutor General was finally, finally appointed by the Ukrainian Parliament, and so she had to stay to brief him as he takes up his new functions. So, Ambassador, thank you for being here. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Yes, it works. Thank you, and it is really my great honor and pleasure to welcome you all to this important side event organized under auspices of 59th session of United Nations Human Rights Council. And of course, I extend my sincere appreciation to the organizers, No Peace Without Justice, Truth Hounds, and our esteemed speakers and partners for their collaboration and unwavering commitment to the cause of justice and accountability. Every day, the Russian full-scale armed aggression against Ukraine, our country endures not only human losses and the destruction of civilian infrastructure, but also deliberate, systematic attacks on our natural environment. In this war, nature has become a silent but heavily wounded victim. The breach of the Kakhovka Dam 2 years ago remains one of the most known and most devastating acts of ecocide in Europe's recent history. As confirmed by the United Nations Environmental Programme, the full magnitude of its environmental, humanitarian, and cross-border consequences may not be known for years or even decades to come. And tragically, this was not an isolated incident, but part of a sustained, deliberate strategy. To date, Ukraine has documented over 8,846 cases of environmental war crimes committed by Russia. From missile strikes on oil depots and refineries to forest fires caused by artillery shellings and pollution of rivers and groundwater with toxic substances, the scale of devastation is really unprecedented. Dear colleagues, hostilities continue to pollute surface and groundwater, destroy biodiversity, poison soil, and threaten food security, not only in Ukraine, but across our region. These environmental crimes represent gross violation of international humanitarian law, human rights law, and the fundamental principles of environmental protection. Today's event serves three important purposes. First, to give voice to those documenting these crimes on the ground, risking their safety to preserve evidence and protect our natural heritage and to assess the environmental damage. Second, to discuss legal pathways to hold the perpetrators accountable under international law. And third, to build alliances and mobilize resources for environmental recovery and a green, resilient future. Our priority remains clear: the restoration of peace and justice and recovery of environment and ecosystem, which can be only achieved when Russia withdraws its troops from the sovereign territory of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders. Let this event be a step towards proving that we are not merely declaring our commitment to the rule of law and environmental security, but are ready to defend them. Thank you for your presence and engagement today, and I hope that we will have a good and productive discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. I will waste no time to give the floor directly to our keynote speaker. Victoria Litvinova is the Deputy Prosecutor General of Ukraine since 2023. She has over a decade of experience in prosecution services, and she oversees the initiatives of the Prosecutor General's Office in respect of environmental crimes, as well as child protection, domestic violence preventions, and human rights compliance. She's also the head of the Coordination Center for Victims and Witnesses Support and promotes the integration of international best practices in Ukraine in documenting environmental and child-related international crimes. I mention child-related international crimes because those are the ones that have been under the microscope at the International Criminal Court. We hope that the ICC will also be supportive of Ukrainian effort in respect of environmental crimes, while maintaining justice as close to the people as it can be. Deputy Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, dear Ambassador Tsembaluk, respectful experts and colleagues. I am grateful to No Peace Without Justice and permanent missions of Ukraine for convening this side event, and to international stakeholders and civil society for their contribution and ongoing support in documenting environmental international crimes. It is widely recognized that war and military aggressions can cause devastating, long-lasting, and often irreversible environmental harm. Natures know no borders. Damage in one country affects entire ecosystem and future generations, threatening public health, food security, biodiversity, and the climate. By integrating environmental concerns into its peace formula, Ukraine acknowledges this reality and commits to actions, including measuring environmental damage, ensuring national and international accountability, promoting green reconstructions. These aims are shared by the high-level working group on environmental consequences of war, co-chaired by Andriy Yermak and Margot Wallström. In February 2024, it adopted the Environmental Compact for Ukraine, recommendations for accountability and recovery. Today, I will focus on accountability. Despite existing legal frameworks, environmental destructions is too often overlooked. Prosecutions remain rare, allowing impunity as the planet suffers. This must change. Environmental crimes must be fully recognized and responsible states and individuals held accountable for harming our shared nature heritage. Ukraine is acting on two fronts. We pursue accountability from Russia as a state. International law recognized the obligations to make reparations for wrongful acts, including environmental harm. Ukraine has submitted claims to Register of Damage, Form B 3.1 for environmental destruction, and B 3.2 for pillage and resource appropriation. The second round of negotiations for Treaty on Claims Commissions was held last month in The Hague, and we await the outcome. Under Ukrainian law, we investigate environmental crimes as war crimes and ecocide. From the early days of the war, we have seen direct attack on forest, freshwater, and marine ecosystem, as well as urban assaults affecting food warehouses and oil depots. Worse, attack on critical infrastructure, such as nuclear facility and dams, have already occurred. the Kakhovka Dam's destructions, attack on Oskil Dam, and shelling of the Kharkiv neutron source facility that houses nuclear subcritical installations and storage facility for nuclear materials. These are stark examples. So far, we have 236 ongoing criminal proceedings for environmental war crimes and 11 cases of ecocide. This is handled by the International Environmental Crimes Units within the Specialized Environmental Prosecution Office, the War Crime Department, and the regional prosecutors. Investigating and prosecuting environmental crimes is challenging. The first issue is the lack of a clear legal framework defining such crimes as international offenses, apart from one provisions in Article 8 of the Rome Statute. This gap makes accountability more difficult. Second, there is limited specialized knowledge among investigators, prosecutors, and judges. Environmental crimes demand expertise in environmental science, toxicology, geoinformation system, and damage assessments, areas beyond traditional criminal law. Third, resource constraint, technical, financial, and human, along with limited access to modern equipment and scientific cooperations, hinder effectiveness. Moreover, the transboundary nature of these crimes requires complex international legal collaboration. To address this challenge, we are taking key steps: clarifying the definition and interpretations of environmental crimes, building capacity among those documenting and investigating these offenses, ensuring adequate forensic and technical support, and enhancing international cooperation on cross-border harm. We are grateful to our partners for their continued expert support, including consultations, training, and workshops. Significant investments are being made in capacity building for prosecutors and investigators with help to national and international partners. Useful tools in our work include the Guide to Identifying and Investigating War Crimes by the Climate Council, which helps standardize approaches to environmental war crimes in armed conflict. It outlines relevant categories, elements, and evidence needed for effective prosecutions. A new regulation developed with Justice Rapid Response on protecting child victim witnesses during investigations of environmental crimes. It supports child-sensitive procedures for prosecutors, especially in cases impacting children's rights and well-being. We are also working with partners to ensure accurate samplings and evidence collections. Two main issues stand out: integrations of scientific and technological tools, such as geospatial analysis and satellite images, is critical for proving links between unlawful acts and environmental or human harm. Timely support from partners in this area is essential. Multidisciplinary expertise is vital. Due to the complexity of harm, investigations must involve forensic, medical, environmental, engineering, and financial specialists, among others, to fully assess and prove damage. Finally, I want to highlight the importance of international cooperations. We are deeply grateful for the technical and legal support from international partners who have helped us documenting environmental damage, craft legal strategies, and strengthening institutional capacity. A promising avenue is the development of international legal frameworks. We welcome discussion in forums like this and support initiatives by bodies like the International Criminal Court, whose draft policy on environmental crimes under the Rome Statute is a step in the right direction. These efforts are essential to closing the gaps in enforcement and ensuring that crimes against the environment are treated with seriousness they deserve on the global stage. Thank you very much for your attention and for organizing this important event for us.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Prosecutor, for your testimony. I'm very pleased now to give the floor to Dimitro Koval, from Truth Hounds. Truth Hounds is one of the organizations that the deputy prosecutor was talking about, has done extensive research on environmental crimes and other crimes committed by the Russian invading forces. And he himself is an expert in international law. Maybe he did not expect his expertise to be so useful to his country when he studied. But Truth Hound is one of the most effective organizations on the ground in collecting and preserving information that can become evidence for prosecutions. Dimitro, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Nicolo. Despite the fact that we are in Geneva office of the headquarters of the United Nations and not a New York one, I will start with the anecdote. And you invited this anecdote, Nicolo. So basically, I indeed never expected that my expertise, academic expertise will be so of use for Ukraine, but also for other countries as well. And the funny thing that my PhD defense happened in March of 2014, the very months when the occupation of Crimea was going on, and basically the referendum was in the preparation. So from the very outset of my finalization of my academic research, I was in a way prepared to work on accountability track for Ukraine, but not only for Ukraine, for also other countries that face similar difficulties in pursuing justice and fighting impunity with regards to atrocity crimes. So speaking about environmental crimes, one of the issues that I was asked to cover today is the patterns of violations or patterns of environmental crimes. And maybe a little bit in contradiction to the name of my intervention, I will start rather not with patterns, but with a variety of different violations that we can see, observe, and document in Ukraine. The Deputy Prosecutor General mentioned the Climate Council Guide to Investigation of Environmental Crimes. Those of you who haven't seen it but still interested in how international environmental crimes may be investigated, I deeply encourage to look at this guide, because it gives a very good introduction and overview of how international crimes may be prosecuted internationally, but also what types of international crimes are there. And more or less all types of international crimes that international law for now foresees in either Rome Statute or other international instruments have been committed in Ukraine so far. So we have seen the so-called attack-related crimes, and by those I mean three major crimes. One is the direct attacks against civilian objects. As we all know, environment is one of the civilian objects. We also saw what is known as disproportionate attacks, so attacks on military objectives that cause disproportionate harm to environment, which is sometimes even reach the threshold of widespread, long-term, and severe, as, for instance, with the case of Kakhovka that my organization investigated a year ago. And also, we have seen attacks that are targeting objects indispensable for the survival of civilian population. So all three types of attack-related crimes are there. Now, with other types of crimes, we also see such crime as destruction of enemy property, which is not caused by military necessity. So again, with numerous objectives or objects rather on the occupied territory, we see that they are being destroyed without military necessity, with causing damage to environment. And that's something that is of concern for Ukraine, but also should be a concern for other countries, since, as Deputy Prosecutor General put it, there are no boundaries for the nature or environment. And then we see also the pillage of resources in the natural reserves, and pillage of resources that cause environmental damage all over occupied territory, especially in Crimea and eastern Ukraine, but not limited to those particular parcels of Ukrainian land. Anyhow, the variety of crimes is indeed tremendous. So we documented all types of violations against the environment that have different levels of impact. However, and now I come closer to the name of my intervention, indeed there might be seen some patterns. And those patterns are the following. First of all, when it comes to the need to somehow calculate whether such an act might cause damage to environment that is higher, bigger than the military advantage anticipated, these calculations never are being done by the Russian Federation in this armed conflict. Even with the most obvious impact on environment, like for instance with Kakhovka Dam destruction, when there was from the outset quite clear that the damage and impact on the environment will be so huge that no military advantage can in any way balance that impact. The needs to protect the environment were haven't been taken into consideration. So again, one of the pattern things is that there is the ignorance of international humanitarian law provision that require the state to balance their acts and not to harm environment where possible, where military necessity does not require it imperatively. Another thing that may be characterized as a pattern would be the desire of the Russian Federation in most of the most outrageous attacks on environment or attacks that cause damage to environment to blur the line between the truth and false information. Basically, before every attack, or most of the big attacks, we see that the Russian Federation tries to plant the narrative that Ukrainian side in the conflict wants or will attempt in the future to conduct an attack that would cause certain environmental harm. This happened with Kakhovka, and I know this because we documented these types of statements and interventions of the Russian Federation just to build the case that we were building in case of Kakhovka. So we need to know what was said before the attack to track the so-called mens rea, or the mental element, the mental attitude of the perpetrators of the attack to the attacks, and whether they calculated somehow the potential environmental harm that could have been caused by the attack or not. So in case of Kakhovka, there was a widespread disinformation campaign attempted at basically, as I put it, planting the narrative that Ukrainian side is preparing to blow up the dam, which it didn't control at that point, by the way. Anyhow, that's one of the examples of this attempt to blur the line between true information and false information. Another example of this same pattern would be the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Before each violation, that major violation at least that happens with the power plant, either attack by drones of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, or stationing the military equipment and military personnel on the power plant, Russian Federation always speaks about Ukrainian attempts to basically attack Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant to reach some geopolitical or military ends, which of course is not true, and each such statement usually follows with Russian own attack or violation against the safety of Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. I can go on with the list of this disinformation campaign that are being launched either before or right after the attack. But the basic idea of these campaigns is to, as I mentioned, blur this line between what was really happening and what the Russian Federation wants to happen. And basically, in the shadow of this blurred line, the Russian Federation tries to hide its motives, first of all, but also hide from the responsibility. Because in a way, international law, international criminal law in particular, gives some space to maneuver around the existing IHL provision that protect the environment and basically hide in the reasonable doubt shadow. And that's what is happening with environmental crimes. So just to sum up, what all those things that I've just mentioned demonstrate is that there is no respect to environment, to the impact of armed conflict on environment and on climate on one of the sides of the conflict in Ukraine. And by one of the sides, I of course mean the Russian Federation. And that is quite sane when it comes to those principles and those goals that now the international community faces right now. And by these principles and goals, I mean, of course, the attempt to still keep faith and basically to be bound by the international humanitarian law provisions, but above that, to save the planet from the crises that are connected with the climate change and environmental pollution. So on this, I would probably end and maybe reiterate one further that indeed, on the Ukrainian side, there are many attempts, both on the level of non-governmental organizations, but also on the level of governmental institutions, to create some universal responses to the crises with the environment that we all facing. For instance, there are measures, there are protocols created to document different types of environmental impact. There are attempts to what I call bridge the science and the law when it comes to making some legal sense from what we know from science, how the those environmental impacts unfolded with regards to the armed conflict. And there are many other things, both on the legal side and on technical side, that are being done. The draft policy of the ICC OTP was mentioned, is one of the things that Ukraine tried to influence, and I back that statement. Indeed, my organization, for instance, Truth Hounds, submitted the comments to the draft policy of the ICC OTP that were based on our experience of investigating real international crime, war crime against environment. So indeed, Ukraine is accumulating expertise that might be needed in other parts of the world, and I invite all of you to use this expertise and basically include Ukrainians into the dialogue about the future of environmental law and future of international humanitarian law that protects environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dmitry. I'm now very pleased to turn to one of our remote participants again, Eugenia Kopitsia. She is an expert precisely in international environmental law and Ukrainian environmental law, and she has done her research exactly on the crimes against the environment committed in Ukraine. She's joining us from Ukraine. As a reminder, to hear her, you will need to use the headset. Eugenia, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. And I would like to sincerely thank the organizers of today's event for bringing together such a diverse and committed group of experts, practitioners, and advocates from Ukraine, but as well from all of the different parts. The leadership in convening this discussion on accountability for wartime environmental crimes, it's super essential. And very much like Dmitro, who mentioned that I would never expect that my legal and scholar academic knowledge would be of such a great applicability these days. And when I started doing my PhD on environmental protection long time ago, I had no clue that it would be the hot topic and that Ukraine would be leading the way. And as today was mentioned by the previous speakers, the war in Ukraine and your kind introduction, the war in Ukraine has brought devastation on a scale that touches every region and every community, and that the consequences are profound, and more than 175 billion of euros in direct damage to buildings and infrastructure, to residential buildings alone accounting for a third of losses, and over 200,000 homes are damaged and destroyed. But as it has been mentioned, the environment is a silent victim of the war. And as environmental legal scholar, the first day when on the 24th of February, I got this very clear link that it would be the environment that would suffer a lot. And the environmental toll of the war, it will be felt for the generations. And as of June 2025, the estimated damage to Ukraine's environment exceeds 4 trillion Ukrainian hryvnias, and we have more than 2 million hectares of forest destroyed, the area that is larger than some of the European countries. And about a quarter of Ukraine's territory is now contaminated with landmines and unexploded ordnance, presenting not only the humanitarian crisis, but also the grave ecological threat. And it renders vast areas of farmland and natural habitats that can be unused for decades, unusable for decades. And it will take decades to restore, and at least 30 billion euros to demine the land and begin the ecosystem restoration. And of course, the pollution of air, soil, and water, they have reached already unprecedented levels, and thousands of pollutants incidents have been recorded with explosions at industrial plants and refineries, that it has been mentioned. I can give you the stats from the Zaporizhia region alone. There were around 300 cases of pollutant emissions registered due to the shelling and fires, with air pollution damage exceeding like huge millions of Ukrainian hryvnias. And the destruction of the sewage system and industrial infrastructure, it has led to widespread contamination of rivers and groundwater. But on the top of that, the war has also triggered a surge in greenhouse gas emissions, something that has always been out of the scope of the international attention, that war-related emissions, they have always been there, but they were never neither registered nor like accountable by the countries within UNFCCC. And while some emissions dropped due to reduced industrial activity in Ukraine, war-related activities, including military operations, landscape fires, and infrastructure destruction, they generated an estimated 230 million of tons of CO2 equivalent over the 3 years, which can be compared to the annual emissions of several European countries combined. And still, there is no accountability for the war-related emissions. There is no legal mechanism these days that would ensure that military overall is reporting the emissions, but neither is done on the behalf of the war-related emissions. And of course, biodiversity is under the acute threat. And the populations of the rare species which we have in Ukraine, such as bustards, cranes, and bats, they have declined by tens of % in active conflict zones. The scale of the destruction of the waste is also unprecedented, with at least 50 major waste storage sites now operating to manage debris from destroyed buildings and infrastructure. But the point which I'm here to make, it's that despite all of these challenges, Ukraine is committed to the green recovery, and that the government, together with international partners and civil society, is developing a comprehensive strategy that has been mentioned by the speaker from the General Prosecutor's office, that we have the Environmental Compact for Ukraine, the framework of 50 strategic recommendations for integrated environmental considerations into all aspects of recovery and aligning with European environmental standards. And it is the local communities and NGOs that are already leading by the example. The projects that are supported by organizations like EcoAction and Ukraine Build Better platform, they're implementing already natural-based solutions, such as the creation of biodiversity zones in Krasnokulsk, Kharkiv Oblast, where I'm originally from. And these are the pilots for the climate adaptation and green reconstruction initiatives in the liberated and less affected areas. And these efforts are currently grounded in participatory, inclusive processes that involve local experts and residents and authorities, trying to ensure that the recovery which we have in mind under the governmental vision and the president's peace formula, that this recovery is sustainable and responsive. But local communities at the same time, they face multiple challenges. First of all, it is the lack of resources and funding for rapid and quality reconstruction. It's a limited participation in decision-making sometimes about the rebuilding priorities, and the difficulty of integrated environmental and climate standards due to the lack of expertise and regulatory frameworks. And of course, the prolonged displacement. We have around 62% of internally displaced people that have been away from their homes for for the whole duration of the ongoing full Russian-scale invasion, with the largest numbers in Dnipro, Kharkiv, and Kyiv regions. And as the member of Ukraine Build Back Better group, I have been working directly with local actors in regions like Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, and Chernihiv. And through the participatory workshops and co-design processes, we have engaged like around 500 local stakeholders in developing urban recovery plans that talking to people on the ground who are witnessing the environmental destruction, it's incredibly important. And the research that we are doing and the direct experience show that democratic, inclusive, and integrated planning must be the foundation of Ukraine's recovery. So with all of the efforts with documenting the war-related crimes, but as well including having this possibly optimistic, but still, this directing vision of the green recovery and reconstruction. This is something that we can build upon, build on the trust and support long-term vision of the sustainable development of Ukraine. And in conclusion, I would like to sum it all up because I can keep on saying about this fantastic initiative that Ukrainian local stakeholders and NGOs are implementing on the ground. All of these demands coordinated efforts from the states, from the local communities, NGOs, and of course, international partners. Ukraine has been pretty much privileged to have the support of the European countries, with the one that gave us the possibility to lead in the efforts of protecting our environment currently when the war is still ongoing. But at the same time, I wanted to say that Ukraine's experience, that it was mentioned by Dmytro, can serve as the model for other countries that are facing similar challenges. But we really need continued support to documenting environmental crimes. We need to implement modern standards, and this is what local actors are proactively doing. And of course, we have to keep in mind the rights of the affected communities and to protect them. Thank you once again for the organizers and to all of you for the attention and to the commitment, and hope that you would support like the vision that local stakeholders, local communities have, that we are using this as an opportunity to recover and to build back better and greener and more inclusive and equitable Ukraine. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Eugenia, for that vision. In the midst of conflict and devastation, it's very impressive that you're looking forward and thinking of priorities. With your permission, Ambassador, I would like to open the floor for questions from the floor. I will start with the representative of Estonia. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of the event for bringing us together on this important topic in order to shed light on one of the tasks of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, the consequences that it brings to Ukraine and also wider. But I was also struck by the fact that the extraordinary resilience of Ukrainians. You look ahead, despite the war, in the middle of the war, you look ahead how to build back better, how to align the policies you have with the European norms. So congratulations on this, really. And as it was said already by the ambassador, that nature, unfortunately, is the silent victim of the war. But nevertheless, we have to pay attention to this part as well, as the environment can be used as a weapon, as a tool during the armed conflict, and this is what is happening in Ukraine, caused by the Russian Federation, and of course the impact it will have for generations to come, the legacy that this will leave, is just tremendous. So it brings me to the accountability, and it was a lot of talk about accountability here. And cooperation as well, and I would like to you mentioned, several briefers mentioned a little bit, but to know a little bit more how we can help, how I mean, whom are you cooperating with? How can the international community help, and also in terms of collecting evidence? I understand that it's extremely complex, considering the circumstances and also the impact that is actually cross-border. So yes, how can international community help? How are the actors you are looking for? How can we help? And I think finally perhaps the only positive thing about what's going on is the work that you are already doing in this context of that it will build. It will help future conflicts and future impact, also in terms of the legal framework that is advancing and everything. So yeah, thank you very much, and looking forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. The representative from Lithuania.
Moderator, and well, first of all, apologies that my ambassador is not here, but he is in room 20 doing some other human rights related work. We thank the organizers, dear friends from Ukraine, for convening us today here and for sharing all this information, which is extremely important to know. And Lithuania stands in unwavering solidarity with Ukraine as it faces the devastating consequences of Russia's unprovoked war. Among many atrocities, the deliberate destruction of Ukraine's environment is a grave crime, one that transcends borders and generations, and it was mentioned today. And all the devastating result on environment is not just like collateral damage, this is ecocide. And the international community has a moral and legal obligation to ensure accountability. And I'm glad to hear that Ukrainians already talk about recovery plans, and we totally support that justice must go hand in hand with recovery. And Lithuania envisions a post-war Ukraine rebuilt on sustainability, resilience, and ecological justice. We are committed to supporting Ukraine in this vision through implementing European standards for Ukraine's green recovery, supporting environmental and energy infrastructure projects, advancing solar energy, rebuilding schools, developing digital tools for sustainable urban planning. Environmental crimes are not just attacks on nature, they are attacks on humanity, and they threaten food security, public health, the very foundations of peace. And Lithuania calls on all states to join us in this, in making justice for environmental crimes the norm, amplifying voices of affected communities and making restoration of nature a pillar of peace. And if you see how else we could be helpful in this regard, what else we can do in order to ensure this, we are here to listen. Thank you.
Thank the representative of Lithuania. And I'll take a couple more questions before we give the floor back to the panelists. No need. I should mention that the deputy prosecutor has started, has had to step out, but I'm very pleased that in her place is the person who's actually in charge of the prosecution of crimes against the environment, the head of the specialized environmental unit in the office of the Prosecutor General, Mr. Indichenko Boris, who is stepping in for the deputy prosecutor. So he will also be able to join the Q&A for us. I don't know if Mr. Indichenko, Boris, you want to start answering the question, what can we do from the ambassador of Estonia, which was echoed also by the Lithuanian representative. What can we do? What can the international community do? Mr. Boris, if you can, Indichenko, if you can hear us, you have the floor.
Hello. Yes, I hear you. I need to use the help of interpreter. That's why. Yes, hello. Так, ми маємо дійсно ключові актуальні потреби, в яких ми потребуємо допомоги. Це і посилення спроможності органів прокуратури та слідства, оскільки екологічні злочини міжнародні проти довкілля раніше ніхто не розслідував, тому Україна стикнулася з цим вперше.
Yes, I would like to say that we have a few issues and few challenges. We could use the help of the international community and our partners. So this is first of all the capacity building for the prosecutors and investigation services, as the environmental crimes are not well established practice of investigation. So we are basically newcomers and the forefront barriers in these investigations.
Також для нас було б корисно надання стратегічних консультацій щодо подальшого картування, відбору і визначення пріоритетності кримінальних проваджень, оскільки ми маємо дуже багато злочинів воєнних, які впливають на довкілля, однак всі ми розуміємо, що зовсім не всі ці злочини є злочинами саме проти довкілля згідно з вимогами міжнародного права.
Also, we require assistance in road mapping, also making the priorities of the investigations that we want to pursue and to prosecute, as we have a lot of the war crimes, and the war crimes, they basically affect the environment, but we understand that not all war crimes are committed against the environment, and therefore we need to clearly define our priorities, as we have limited capacities to better use our efforts.
Також для доведення злочину екоциду нам необхідно чітке визначення, що таке широкомасштабна, довготривала і серйозна шкода для довкілля, оскільки наше законодавство наразі не має таких визначення цих термінів.
And also we have to be able to give the better legal assessment and the better proof and the better evidence which will be put into the justifying the commissions of the war crimes against the environment. We have to clearly define and articulate what are the definitions and of this criteria that needs to be made and met to be these crimes to be qualified as war crimes against the environment. This is the full scale, the severity, and the long-term effect of these crimes.
Крім того, ми не залишаємо осторонь ідею винайдення шляху щодо документування воєнних злочинів проти довкілля через призму впливу воєнної агресії щодо таких об'єктів, як лісові ресурси, природозаповідний фонд та наше біорізноманіття.
Also, we keep the idea alive that we could find a way to document the war crimes against the environment through this standpoint of its impact of the aggression at such objects of the environmental sphere and environment as the forests, biodiversity, natural landscapes, and other objects of the nature.
Якщо говорити про співпрацю з нашими міжнародними колегами, то нам дуже потрібна ваша допомога для того, щоб документувати наслідки впливу війни на довкілля в інших країнах, як, наприклад, вплив на країни, які мають узбережжя Чорного моря, від підриву Каховської гідроелектростанції, або вплив на атмосферне повітря внаслідок систематичних вибухів і взривів, які відбуваються на нашій території.
Also, we would like to have the assistance which we may be useful to us from our international colleagues and partners and other countries, that we could use the documentation in those countries regarding the effect of the war crimes committed against environment and the consequences. For example, the countries which border with Ukraine and Black Sea, and also the damage to the atmosphere caused by the multiple shellings and missile strikes.
І взагалі хочу наостанок подякувати всім міжнародним організаціям, які долучилися і допомагають нам системно документувати наслідки воєнних злочинів проти довкілля.
And finally, I would like to conclude with being appreciative and to say thank you to all the international partners and organizations which are helping us to do the systematic and holistic approach in documenting and assessing the damage done and the helping the prosecution of the war crimes against environment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If I can turn to Dimitro with Truth Hound, you've done this work tremendously well, particularly the documentation on the dam. What can we do to answer the question from the ambassador from Estonia?
Thank you. So, first of all, indeed, most of the work would be still on Ukraine, since most of the cases are better connected to Ukrainian jurisdiction than any other, and therefore it's Ukrainian responsibility to build cases, prosecute those who perpetrated the crimes, and do other engage with other justice mechanisms that are there. But there is still a role for international community, at least to the best of my understanding. For instance, when it comes to International Criminal Court, that might take some of the cases that have to do with environmental damage to its portfolio, add them to its portfolio and fully investigate them. But because of the complexity of environmental cases, ICC shies away, at least for now, from engaging substantially with judicial instruments, but quasi-judicial ones. You're well aware of the growing body of successful application to the Human Rights Committee, for instance, in cases where environmental harm is addressed not directly, but through the human rights, through the ICCPR rights of individuals. And I think that the similar case may be brought with regards to Kakhovka, for instance, or any other environmental violation in Ukraine. And therefore, if such case appears in the Human Rights Committee, there will be the need of those who sit in the committee right now, but also of other states who might be there in the future, to back such attempts to speak about environmental harm in a creative way that basically involves this idea of pairing the human rights violation under the ICCPR and environmental harm that is caused by war-related actions. So those are two ideas that I could come up with, but I think that in the implementation of those ideas, the role of international community will be huge.
Thank you very much. We're running out of time, as you can see. I will leave the ambassador to say just a few seconds of conclusions.
Thank you very much. I was not going to have it as conclusions. I was just going to state that, of course, there is a huge demand in international support, as it was mentioned, in specialists, resources, other things. But here in Geneva, we are also able to contribute to that. So in different organs, in Human Rights Council, we have Basel, Rotterdam, Stockholm Convention Secretariat here, meetings ongoing from time to time in different formats. And especially now, when the topic of this ongoing war is somehow, people are trying to get used to it, or not they are trying to get used, but somehow it's becoming a more usual thing, unfortunately, because it's lasts for 3 years already. And we should not forget about this. And I'm not trying to compare war against Ukraine with other difficult situations in the world, but just comparing Ukraine with Ukraine. So we have 70% more shellings in March than a year before. We have 81% more shellings in April than a year before. So I'm not comparing with other regions. I'm just saying that Ukraine deserves additional attention in this regard. So I just invite you to active work in all formats, and I hope that situation 2 months ago, when there was a meeting of this convention of Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm conventions, and I had the statement on behalf of 49 states, and it was questioned by the Secretariat that do I have a right to speak, and if I'm not going to politicize too far in my statement. So I hope such cases will be not in place, and only if we all join our efforts, we can continue to bring necessary, I'm not saying politicized, but the necessary attention to this very important issue. Thank you.